At our family Christmas dinner, they said, "You can eat in the car." My brother smirked. "Why would you even be here?" I stood at the front door, holding a casserole dish with frozen fingers, when my mother looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Oh, there's no more room inside, Evelyn. You can eat in the car." Before I could even process that, my brother, Brad, walked past me in his designer coat and chuckled. "Why would you even be here? This dinner's for family. Like, share, subscribe. If you've ever been treated like a stranger in your own home, this story is for you." I didn't say a word. Just turned around, heart hammering, cheeks burning, and walked back into the cold December night. Snow crunched under my boots as I made my way back to my beat-up Honda Civic, parked awkwardly down the street because Brad's shiny Tesla and Dad's SUV had taken up the whole driveway. I stared through the fogged-up windshield. Inside, warm, light spilled from the windows. I could hear laughter, plates clinking, my mom's holiday playlist humming in the background. My seatbelt buckle dug into my ribs as I tried to breathe through the pain of it all. 3 years ago, I made a choice to walk away from the family business after being blamed for something Brad had done. I didn't defend myself. I didn't beg. I just left. Since then, I'd been erased. From birthdays, from holidays, from every photo on my mom's Facebook. She even unfollowed me. But this year, they invited me. Told me to come home for Christmas. No apologies. Just a time and address. Like it was some kind of test. I passed it. I didn't want drama. I brought the family's favorite sweet potato casserole. I wore the red dress Mom used to love on me. I even bought gifts for everyone. Real ones. Thoughtful ones. But now I was eating alone, outside like I was trash. And Brad had smirked like he planned this. Like it was all just one big game to him. I glanced at the casserole dish beside me. Still warm, still untouched. Just like me. But they had no idea what was coming. No idea that I didn't come back empty-handed. No clue that the biggest gift this Christmas would be the truth. And I wasn't leaving without unwrapping it. I waited in that freezing car for 20 silent minutes. My fingers trembled. Not from the cold, but from the anger boiling under my skin. I kept repeating Brad's words in my head, like a broken loop. Why would you even be here? Because this used to be my family. Because Mom once cried when I missed Christmas. Because I still believed, deep down, they might remember I mattered. But I was wrong. I finally stepped out of the car and grabbed the wrapped gifts from the back seat. Each tag had a name on it: Mom, Dad, Brad, Emily, his wife. They were all sitting inside, pretending I didn't exist. I walked straight to the porch. My hands were steady now. Through the frosted window, I could see them all, laughing, champagne in hand, wearing matching flannel pajamas like some perfect family from a TV ad. Mom was cutting into the roast. Brad was showing off his Rolex, and Dad was bragging about Q4 profits to some cousin I didn't recognize, and not a single one of them noticed the door creak open until I stepped inside. The room fell quiet. "Evelyn," Mom started, holding the knife midair like I'd interrupted a performance. "I just came to drop off the gifts," I said, walking past them like the tension didn't choke the air. "Thought it'd be rude to keep them in the car, like me." Brad scoffed. "Seriously? You're still going on about that?" "I'm not going on about anything," I said. "But since I'm already here..." I placed each gift under the tree. Might as well share a little something I've been saving. Dad crossed his arms. "If this is about that job you walked away from, it's not." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "It's about what happened after." Brad rolled his eyes. "Let me guess. You finally got hired at a coffee shop?" Everyone laughed. Except Mom. Her face twitched, because she noticed what no one else did. My shoes weren't cheap anymore. My coat wasn't thrifted. My hair was done professionally. And my earrings? Real gold. I knelt near the fireplace and pulled out one more box. This one wasn't wrapped in red or green, just a matte black box with a tiny gold seal. "This," I said slowly, "is for Brad." He looked confused. "What the hell is this?" "It's a little something called ownership papers. For a small tech firm you might remember. Sharpbite? You know, the one whose idea you accidentally stole from me 3 years ago." Brad's smirk faded. I stepped closer. "You didn't think I'd build a second version in silence? With better engineers, better code, and, well, better lawyers?" Dead silence. "Congratulations," I said, handing him the envelope. "Sharpbite is officially mine. Bought the whole thing. You're now unemployed." And then I turned to Dad. "Oh, and since your company relied on Sharpbite's back-end platform for your logistics systems," I tilted my head. "Might want to check your email. I just terminated the license." Mom gasped. Dad's face turned pale. Brad lunged toward me, but Emily, his wife, stopped him. "What did you do?" he hissed. I smiled softly, the kind of smile you wear when you've waited 3 years for this moment. "I ate in the car," I whispered. "But I came back to serve the main course." The silence cracked like ice under pressure. Brad stood there, stunned, holding the ownership, papers like they were ticking, his jaw clenched, but his eyes were wide, not with rage, but fear. He looked to Dad, but Dad couldn't even meet his gaze. His hands were already fumbling for his phone, his voice suddenly dry. "Is this some kind of joke?" he said, unlocking his phone with shaky fingers. "It's not," I replied. "Your company's going to lose access to Sharpbite's infrastructure by midnight tonight. You've got about—" I checked my watch. 3 hours. Dad froze. No, that's not possible. We paid them, not me." I stepped forward slowly. "You licensed the tech Brad stole, but I rebuilt it, quietly. I waited until your whole operation was dependent on it. Then, I bought it, clean." Brad dropped the papers on the floor like they burned his hand. "You're bluffing. You really think I'd show up here with a gift that wasn't gift-wrapped in justice?" Mom stepped in then, voice trembling. "Evelyn, honey, why didn't you just say something? We could have worked this out." "Oh, you mean like when you told me to apologize to Brad even though he took my idea, pitched it behind my back, and blamed me for the fallout?" Her lips parted. No sound came out. I turned to Emily, who looked more curious than angry. "You knew, didn't you?" She gave a tiny nod. I figured something was off. Brad's genius always sounded a bit too familiar. Brad whipped, his head toward her. "Emily, don't." Her voice was sharp. "You humiliated her, lied to all of us, and now you've lost everything." He opened his mouth to fire back, but she walked away from him, not even glancing back. Dad finally looked up, ashen-faced. "What do you want, Evelyn?" I blinked at him. "Want?" He nodded. "There's gotta be something you're after. Revenge? Money? Public exposure?" I let out a small, exhausted laugh. "I didn't come here for revenge, or money. I came here to see if any of you still saw me as family. Turns out, I got my answer the moment you told me to eat in the car." Mom's eyes glistened. "We didn't mean—" "You meant every word," I cut her off. "That's what hurts." They all stood still, like statues in some broken snow globe, while I moved to the door again. I paused, then reached into my bag and pulled out one final envelope. Pale blue, crisp, and simple. "This one's for you, Dad," I said, placing it on the table. "You'll want to read it before the board meeting on Monday." "What is it?" he asked, not touching it. I looked over my shoulder. My acquisition offer. For your company. The entire room gasped. You have 3 days to accept, I added, or I pull the licensing agreement entirely. Your call. And just like that, I walked back out into the snow, but this time, it didn't feel cold anymore. Outside, the snow fell softly, silent, like the moment just before an avalanche. But inside that house, I dropped the weight of 3 years of silence. I reached my car and finally let the tears fall, not of pain, but of release. It was over. The pretending, the hoping they'd come around. The ache of being invisible in a room full of people who once claimed to love me. I wasn't the Evelyn they remembered anymore. I wasn't the one begging for a seat at the table. Owned the table now. My phone buzzed. A text from Carter, my lawyer, my most trusted friend in this entire plan. Confirmation. Dad's company just opened the acquisition file. They're panicking. I smiled through tears. Let them panic. Let them feel it. Back then, when Brad stole my software, I didn't fight. I disappeared. Took on 3 jobs. Lived in a cramped 1-bedroom and coded through nights no one saw. I poured every bit of pain into rebuilding, into making something no one could steal again. Now that something was worth $74 million and growing. I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't look like the girl who ate Christmas dinner in a car. I looked like someone who just took everything back. My phone buzzed again, this time a call. It was Mom. I let it ring. Then voicemail. Evelyn. Honey, please call me. We need to talk. Your father's having a breakdown and Brad, he just stormed out. I didn't know. Everything. If I had known, I swear. Click. No apology, just panic. Good, because that's exactly how they made me feel when they chose him over me, when they let the golden boy take everything while I was tossed out like a mistake. But this story wasn't about vengeance. It was about value. Mine. I started the engine, but paused. One last text popped up, this time from Emily. If you ever want to talk woman to woman, I think I picked the wrong Morgan. I laughed. A quiet, genuine laugh. It didn't matter who picked who anymore. I wasn't an option in someone else's life. I was the CEO of my own. As I drove off, I didn't look back at the house. They could keep their roast beef and fake toasts. I had my freedom, my company, my power, and soon I'd have their company too. Merry Christmas. 3 days later, I walked into a glass tower in downtown Chicago, wearing the same red dress they'd seen me in that night, but this time with a purpose stitched into every step. The boardroom of Morgan Industrial was packed. Men in suits, murmuring, shifting nervously. My father sat at the head of the table, face pale, fingers steepled. Brad wasn't there. He'd resigned the day after Christmas, claiming mental health reasons. The media, of course, didn't buy it. Neither did the investors. I took the empty seat at the opposite end. My father cleared his throat. Before we begin, I'll begin, I interrupted. Since I now own 51% of this company's operational infrastructure, and, after this vote, a controlling stake in your board. Stunned silence. One of the directors, a man named Charles, who'd once laughed when I brought coffee as an intern, spoke up. We weren't aware of your holdings being that extensive. I turned my iPad toward him, tapped it, and let the screen project onto the boardroom monitor. Names, transfers, purchase dates, all there. I hadn't just acquired control of the software. I'd bought up stakes through shell firms and silent partners until Morgan Industrial was no longer a family business. It was mine. Dad leaned forward. Evelyn, is this really what you want? To destroy everything we built? I met his eyes, calm. You built it on stolen work, on lies, on silence. I'm not destroying anything. I'm fixing it. One of the directors clapped softly. Then another. Then it spread like a wave. Dad looked down at the table, defeated. The motion passed, unanimously, and just like that, I became CEO of Morgan Industrial. As the room cleared, Dad stood. You win. I stood too. No, I learned. There's a difference. He paused at the door. You're not the same girl who cried when we pushed you out. I shook my head. No, she died in the car that night. I buried her with the casserole. He left without another word. Later that evening, I returned to my apartment, now a sleek penthouse overlooking the city skyline. I poured a glass of wine and looked at the Christmas card I never opened. The one my mom gave me that night, tucked into the bottom of the gift pile like a forgotten apology. I opened it. Inside, scribbled in rushed handwriting, were just 5 words. We didn't know. Forgive us? I stared at it for a long moment, then set it on fire over the kitchen sink. Forgiveness wasn't for them. It was for me. I wasn't the family disappointment anymore. I was the woman they should have never underestimated.